you, Patty. And my story takes place much like a place that's behind me here, out in the South Pacific, in a lagoon, much like this one. There lived a lobster and a flounder. Now, in those days, the flounder was much different than he is today. Why, his body was shaped like a regular fish. He had a big dorsal fin on his back, a tail fin that went back and forth, and he also had an eye on each side of his head. Now, one day, the flounder swam up to the lobster who was hiding inside of his hole in the reef, and he said, "Would you like to play hide and go seek?" "Oh, I don't know," said the lobster. "I don't have anything else to do. I guess so." "Okay, well, it'll be a lot of fun. I want you, well, why don't you go hide first? I'll hide my eyes and you go hide. And when you're ready, just call out you're ready, Camilo, and I'll come and find you." And so the flounder hid his eyes. The lobster crawled out, crossed the sand, and hid behind a big rock. And then he called out that he was ready, "Camilo." And then here came the flounder, uncovered his eyes, swam out across the sand. He looked, and there was the lobster. He was so easy to see because those big antennae he had sticking out from the end of his head were so easy to see. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Now it's my turn. I'll go hide and you hide your eyes, lobster. Please, let's do it again. "Okay, I guess so. It was kind of fun." Well, flounder wanted to play a trick on a lobster. So he swam out across that sandy spot and he waved that tail back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he raised up from the sand a big cloud. And he was hidden in the midst of that cloud. And then he swam around and he got behind the lobster. And then he called out at him, "Camilo." The lobster uncovered his eyes. He looked all around. Well, he couldn't see anything, a big cloud of sand in the water. But that's where he had last seen the flounder. So he crawled out across the sand on all 10 of his legs until he got in the middle of the cloud and he looked around. "I can't find you." Well, the flounder thought he'd be a little bit more helpful, so he called out louder this time, "Camilo." Lobster looked all around, decided the best thing to do was to go where he heard the sound coming from. So he turned around and he walked back out of the cloud, and there was the flounder. And the flounder was laughing at the lobster. This made the lobster very angry. "You don't play fair," the lobster said. "You don't play by the rules." The flounder just kept laughing. So the lobster, he jumped on top of the flounder and started pounding down on top of the flounder's body with all 10 of his legs until he had smashed the flounder flat. "You've ruined my shape. And when I swim, my eye, it gets all filled up with sand." "I can fix that," the lobster said. He reached around with his long claws, he grabbed hold of the flounder's eye, and he began to pull and push and push and pull, and he pulled the flounder's eye right around to the other side of his head. So now he had 2 eyes on one side of his head. "That's okay, I can see now, but I'm still all flat. Make me back the way I was." No, you're gonna stay that way, flounder, and you know what? People are gonna step on you. Well, flounder didn't like the idea of being stepped on by people. So he thought, And he said, you know, they're not going to step on me because I'm going to get down on the bottom and I'm going to wiggle the little fins along the side of my body. And I'm going to flap my tail up and down. For you see, when he was flattened, his tail went from this to this. And I'm going to cover myself up with sand. And people aren't going to see me. And they're not going to step on me. But you lobster, with those big, funny looking antennas sticking out for your head, people are going to see you. And they're going to take you. And they're going to eat you. And from that day to this, sure enough, lobsters, very easy to see. A little hard to catch sometimes, but very easy to see. And people do eat them, and they're very tasty. And flounder, if you want to see flounder, you've got to get out there and look down on the bottom of the water and along the sand. And if you're lucky, you won't see his body, but you might see those two eyes sticking up from one side of his head. And that's the story of Lobster and Flounder, or how flounder became a flatfish. Well, thank you very much. Our next teller is Jonathan Kruk. He's coming to us all the way from, well, 3,000 miles away in Cold Spring, New York. It's a small village, I understand, along the Hudson River. Well, Jonathan's been a full-time storyteller for over 30 years. He's told in schools, libraries, museums, on the main stage of many festivals, and on television as well. But I believe his most outstanding qualification to be part of today's program on Trickster's Tales for Families is that told at over 1,000 birthday parties. That's a cake. So please welcome Jonathan Kruk.
Oh, thanks,